the circuit court is, there doesn't appear to be space above the entrance on Courthouse Lane to do that. And then you could, if you did name the building itself, you could have some type of plaque somewhere inside both buildings that gave more biographical data on the judge. The other alternative we came up with was to name, rather than the actual court buildings, name the courtroom after both judges. And then you would have lettering with their name up above the courtroom entrance, and then again a biographical plaque somewhere adjacent to that. Mr. Schiebel was very helpful in putting together just some examples to kind of show you what you may be looking at, some options available there, as well as the cost associated with that. And the other suggestion is that, sort of a broader suggestion, the board may want to think about developing some type of policy for, when you would name buildings and so forth after individuals, so there's some parameters there. Give staff some direction on that.
Okay, like in terms of parameters, it's like service length or things like that, because if not, we'll have 42 names on all the buildings we have across the county.
Correct. Or
in each courtroom. So, okay, and at this point in time, you were bringing back just information, which we all have now. So I think does the board wish to allow staff some more time to kind of develop a policy to kind of put this together and give us a next step? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Parton.
Yes, sir.
I think that's good. We'll look at that probably sometime in February. Because there's really, the reality is if we name either one of these buildings, we'll probably want a nice groundbreaking in the spring, not one in February when it's cold as could be. So we've got a little while to do that. All right, thank you, Mr. Parton, for your work there. We did agenda item number 9, agenda item number 10. Mr. Wilson, you want us to change IDA to Caroline Economic Development Authority.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Members of the board. Actually, the members of the board of the Industrial Development Authority in December passed a resolution requesting the Board of Supervisors take up this issue to make a simple change to their name from Industrial Development Authority to Economic Development Authority. The rationale is that their scope of operations and activities involving things such as creating the aerial display for the county for properties, for example, one of the topics they took up, they're also considering creating a scholarship for high school students, as well as helping fund and create the Sidney King Arts Center. So therefore, industrial is merely insufficiently descriptive of their activities. They feel that they're affecting a broader array of economic activities in the county, and their name should reflect that. I should also mention we did talk to council and we're told that this would not affect any of their contractual obligations at this point, having been instrumental in such as getting the bonds for the state fair and so forth. None of those relationships are changed, and that should also not affect any of their scope or powers or activities in the future.
Okay, and that's all in your staff report?
Yes, sir.
You verified with the county attorney the proposed name change has no impact on existing contracts. And you reference a text amendment, section 10.2 of the code of the county. We have to make that change, and yes, because sir, we make that change, it
requires a public hearing. Okay. We also have 2 members of the IDA board with us this evening, Mr. John Stoddard and Mr. Andy Andrews. They're showing their interest by attending this evening.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. I don't see a problem in doing or moving forward to public hearing. Is there discussion on the board? Issues, concerns, questions? Excellent presentation, Mr. Wilson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will, Mr. Culley, what does the You'd like this done as soon as possible?
Yes, sir.
Want to do the public hearing now?
I think we have to advertise that.
Oh, okay. Do we have enough time for the 28th or the first week in February? February? The first meeting in February or the second meeting?
We only have one in February.
Oh, there's only one, so the meeting in February.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're going to do this budget stuff? Okay. So you're going to, could you put this on the calendar for then and advertise? Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, 10A was the item we added at Mr. Underwood's request for Commonwealth Transportation Board.
Mr. Chairman, I was contacted by Mr. Charlie Payne, who wanted the support of this board and asked that we consider drafting a resolution in his support for the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Send a letter and a resolution to the Commonwealth of Virginia recommending him for that position. I thought it would be something worth discussing before the board, so we just get it out in the open and see how the board wishes to proceed, or at least have a discussion about it.
All right. Well, it's there. How does the board feel about it?
Mr. Chairman, it is a fact that Mr. Payne has certainly argued cases, presented cases, if you will, presented individuals that wanted to develop, move into, or what have you, before this board. But I do recognize that Mr. Payne has received the endorsement and a resolution from Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, the City of Fredericksburg, Rob Whitman's office, the Chamber of Commerce in Fredericksburg. He's also in the process of receiving from the King George Board, according to their chairman, that was at a meeting I was at last evening, an endorsement. And I just think it's important that we not stand out here alone and not support Mr. Payne for appointment. And again, it's appointed by the governor, certainly not by us. But I think that it would help if this board sent a resolution to the governor-elect, or the governor now, indicating that we would endorse Mr. Payne for the position of transportation board member representing this region.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I've never seen this board ever endorse anybody for the Commonwealth Transportation Board. There have been members for years past, and typically they are party elections, and I think that each board member can certainly endorse somebody that's running for the CTB or is interested in the CTB site or position, but I don't know that boards of supervisors should be actually doing resolutions in support of Commonwealth Transportation Board members. I haven't seen that in the past, and I don't know what's making this different this time.
Mr. Chairman, it has been done in the past because when Merle Carter was appointed to the Transportation Board, this board passed a resolution in support of her.
We did that. Yeah, I do remember that one.
We didn't do it for Cord Sterling or others that have
We
been.
weren't asked by Cord Sterling.
Yeah, we didn't
He
do it
knew
for
he had a
Cord.
position.
No.
He didn't ask.
I know we did it for Mary Lee. The question, and it's always good to have someone on the Commonwealth Transportation Board that's familiar with the county and may do things favorable for the county. Would that prevent him from then presenting zoning cases to the county?
I think that Mr. Payne presents zoning cases before every county in this region. I think in Spotsylvania, I think he does in probably in Westmoreland, wherever the transportation district that he would serve in, he presents cases or presents rezoning issues before those counties. Certainly in Fredericksburg, and certainly within King George and Spotsylvania and Stafford County, he does make presentations. I just found it intriguing that he received the endorsement of the Stafford Board.
I'm on their website. I'm trying to find it to see if they did their agenda. So
Well, I
I'm
mean,
trying to find it.
this is an email that comes from Mr. Payne, and he indicates where his endorsements come from, and I would trust that he would not lie about it, and if he does, then, or if he has, we don't want to endorse him as a transportation board member.
sure he had nothing to do with that traffic study either, right? I got
In
two
New
great,
Jersey?
I got two great ones, a traffic study, and I can keep my same insurance.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, he hadn't been in New Jersey lately, so he's.
Okay, this is saying I also have the support of Congressman Whitman, state
Yes.
senators, Fredericksburg Chamber, Spotsylvania City. Okay.
And again, I was at a meeting last evening with Joe Gaziker and Charlie Payne happened to be at that meeting, and Joe indicated to him that he would get the endorsement of his board, I believe it's next week.
Okay, we're just discussing it. My feelings are, you know, I'm a people. I'm human. I've come before you. You turned my case down. My client's unhappy. He makes me unhappy. Do I feel the same way about you when the transportation case comes up? I'm supposed to, because that's my job. Can you always separate those two? The other thing is, he's actually paid as a lawyer to represent whoever, and he's going to get paid whether he wins or loses. So he presents the best case, and that's it. And maybe he can flush all of what happens once the decision's gone and he moves on. So, I mean, that's the only thing. I think that's what Mr. Seeley mentioned. That's my only concern, but obviously Spotsylvania and Stafford don't feel the same way.
Right. And the fact is, Mr. Payne has not been successful on every rezoning request that he's come before this board on. And I don't know that he has had any issues with this board on those cases that he's not been successful with. I just believe it's important. Mr. Payne.
I remember him for 4.
I'm sorry?
I remember him for about 4. He did ALA twice.
Yeah, but
And he did a couple of other things before that.
He's been presenting rezoning cases for this board for a number of years. You're only talking about in the last year.
No, I'm saying I only remember about 4. So, I mean, I'm sure he's done. Yeah, he did one of the gravel ones.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr.
May I?
Taylor.
Okay, Mr. Payne called me personally and certainly asked for my endorsement, not as a board, but my personal. I guess the thing I'm thinking in this situation is we don't have anything to lose by endorsing him. I don't think it's going to put us in any ways in a bad light. He is someone that we know. He's someone who has worked, we feel has served our purpose as best he could. And I do know from experience, you have to have someone in the boardroom when a decision is being made. That just may give you somewhat of an up on getting the service that you desire. So given the fact that it's not going to hurt us, and I really don't think it is, given the fact that I think certainly he has served us well even without our endorsement. So I certainly don't think that could hurt us. I think that might even help us. And given the fact that the other localities within the district have seen fit to endorse him, I think we should too. It's my opinion.
Okay, and understand. Okay, anybody else? Mr. Black? Is there anybody else? It's the governor's appointment. Is there anybody else in the mix or involved, or is there somebody else running? Or? So theoretically, he's the only person the governor's going to appoint, and the governor's going to appoint him if he's the only one, whether we say yes or no.
I would think that he has enough ties with the governor. But yeah, that's a good chance that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't.
You know, my opinion, Mr. Chairman, is, you know, Mr. Payne has certainly come before this board and represented himself well and the clients that he represented. But here again, because we all don't agree for which side of the table he was on, certainly doesn't say that we should not. I mean, I personally think he does an outstanding job of what he does. He gets to the point. He's a good litigator. So, I mean, from that perspective, he does his due diligence. That's what I would expect of someone on this board, to do their due diligence, to be able to look at the legal frameworks and to be able to add assistance to the board to this transportation board that would help us as we look down the road long-term, that could help our county in a very viable manner here, particularly with things that are coming on the table. So I can only see it as a plus.
I certainly feel that, as Mr. Underwood has just said, I would rather have someone in my corner in a boardroom arguing my case for putting more transportation dollars into Caroline County of the caliber of Mr. Payne than I had some other people. If we want to talk about conflict of interest, what more conflict of interest could you have than having a Board of Supervisor member serving on the Commonwealth Transportation Board? Now, that is a conflict of interest, I think, sincerely, because they're going to look out for their county. And I'm just saying that's overall.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think that's just
I just find it interesting that somebody who comes to the boards as an attorney is going to be appointed to the Commonwealth, and I don't know if there's anybody else or not.
I don't know either.
And that's the other question is, who else is there, and will this be the appointee?
Nobody asked us for
That's right. Nobody else
I understand, but that doesn't mean there isn't anybody else.
Right. Well, all I know, Mr. Seeley, Mr. Chairman, if I could address Mr. Seeley. All I know is
you
that,
can tell me.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Again, no one contacted me regarding this position. Mr. Payne contacted me and asked me if we would consider giving him support, and we had a very lengthy discussion. Again, noble gentleman, so I told him I would certainly put it on the table for discussion, because I think it's worthwhile to be discussed.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we pass, that the board would pass a resolution in support of Mr. Charles Payne to be appointed to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, representing the I think it's the Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg region?
Yeah, region.
District. Thank you. Okay. Was there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Underwood, to develop a resolution in support. Resolution support endorsement. Mr. Akers, clarification. Resolution of support.
Yes.
Okay. For Mr. Payne, for our next board meeting or right now?
I would think that we'd want to go ahead and approve it for this now, and you sign off on it before the resolution is sent to the governor. I mean, the staff is going to put the
resolution together.
We aren't as a board.
Right.
So if you see it and you sign it, then you know it's going to be basically what this board has talked about and wants into the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to, we meet in 2 weeks. Can it come back at that time?
I don't know when the appointment is, but I will wait till Friday to sign it.
Well, I see you going on Friday. That's fine. I mean,
It's been a vote second.
Yeah. Well, we were clarifying his resolution. I mean, to make sure whether it was no, his resolution was endorsement, and I said, Friday's Lee Jackson Day, Thursday.
Thursday's fine. I mean, they're going to put
Enough time for you
together
to come
something.
home. I'll just stop up late Thursday. That'll give us 2 full days to check. You can check whatever you want. Okay. Again, clarifying the motion to make sure we are going to put together a resolution endorsing him for the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
Endorsing, that's correct. That's what.
Resolution endorsing.
That's correct.
And that we will have staff put together tomorrow. We'll allow any board member who wants to check anything else out, and I'll sign it Thursday as late in the day as possible. Well, if you come up with something, if there's anything discovered that would cause the board to change its mind, if you send that to me or Mr. Cully, we will send it to all the rest of the board members, and then you can, we still gonna carry the motion. I'm still, we just want to, okay. They'll comment directly.
Deliberation by email, but clearly if Mr. Seeley wanted something, language changed, he could certainly work with Mr. Thomas. For some reason, Mr. Thomas felt it couldn't be signed, he could bring it back, but.
He wants to change an E to a D or something. I have no problem with that.
Shall and may.
Yeah,
and all
shall
that.
and may or whatever.
I think we're on board. If something out of the ordinary comes, I will inform Mr. Cully, who will then individually inform board members that there is an issue.
Yeah.
And then we will call you to see what we do after that.
Certainly.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right, I think we've clarified the motion enough times. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously. And we move to agenda item number 11, Capital Projects Report. Mr. Cully.
We included in your board packet the update on capital projects. As you can see, we're finishing up many of the projects that we've had ongoing. So that's all right. Just if you had any questions on any of the ongoing projects, most all of them are just about complete on the county side.
No questions for Mr. Cully? No questions for Mr. Cully? Port Royal Visitor Center, 110% complete?
We had a change order for that lift that ended up raising that project above the original cost after it was bid out, but we were getting reimbursement from VDOT. And so we just about have all the paperwork submitted. I think we may have gotten all that submitted to get our final reimbursement. That was the estimated budget. We spent more than the estimated budget, but it was based on one change order due to equipment that we had bid didn't meet ADA specs any longer. It did when we bid it out, and it changed.
And the specs changed.
Specs changed.
Okay. And the school projects, 10.5 million, they spent 9.4. I think that's the million.
Yeah, they haven't.
Dr.
They're still holding them.
Kilo was
They're still
talking
holding
about.
money, so they're not complete yet. So I would expect that number to go up.
Okay. And radio system meets Thursday to talk about what to do next, right?
1 o'clock.
Thursday?
1 o'clock.
Okay.
Thursday down here.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Cully? No questions? Closing board comments. Mr. Taylor.
I don't have any.
Mr. Black.
None at this time.
Mr. Underwood.
Just have a couple, Mr. Chairman. As we move toward taxation of our residents, I'm asking this board to begin to look at some of the relief that's given within the county. As most of us know, only 33% of the taxpayers in the county pay 100% of their taxes. I would ask that we look at our tax relief policies to make sure that we are in order. We can only tax citizens up to a point. I think we're getting very close to a point of no return. I do understand that we have some fiduciary responsibility, but I think we need to look at it in terms of making sure that we're not overtaxing and that we begin to look at other ways to increase revenue within the county without doing harm to our citizens. Second, with regards to the comment made by Ms. Lambert regarding the State Farm proffers, we did talk about not having races.
State Fair.
State Fair. Sorry. State Fair. And the proffers, it did discuss not having racing as part of the proffers there. So certainly, if we are going back on our word, then certainly we need to come back and talk to the residents within Reedy Church and let them know that we're not going to keep our word. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. While we were going back and forth, there is a car show at the State Fair in February. I think, yeah, that's a car show. Then the week after, I think, is the driving school. So you're probably right about cars and motor vehicles and no racing there.
Right.
So we'll have to check the proffers. I think Mr. Fincham is going to take care of that for you. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, just to bring the board up to date and also the residents of Caroline County, it appears that the YMCA will be opening up. The grand opening is going to be somewhere around the last week of February. They are finishing up the process now, so hopefully around February 28th, March 1st, everything will be in operation. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Marine has left, but I'm sure we'll hear from him as we get closer.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Chairman, one closing board comment. We've talked about a technology committee in the past in terms of coming up with the radio system being done and some other things that could potentially piggyback that. I was curious if we could actually move forward with that.
I think we should. And I had intended to have Mrs. Hall set up a meeting of what was our technology committee before, and kind of if we can get those folks, not the vendors, but just the stakeholders. Okay. She would be able to say, definitely not the vendors, because we had MetroCast and, what's yours, Comcast?
Right.
We had MetroCast and Comcast there, because our focus was to try to get internet. So they were at the table. But I think all the stakeholders we had with the school board, actually I think Mr. Lambert was there from the sheriff's office at some point in time, to talk about technology we had in the county. And as we go forward this radio system, it's really somebody's got to manage the radio system. You know, it's going to be a big job. We're going to do other things. The school board's got all of their technology, so somehow we need to work together to do that. So probably the first step will be us to get together, to meet and see where we are, and then as we get into the budget process, we'll see if there are any other needs. Like maybe if we really have to hire a person, or if we have to pull somebody from somewhere, or if we have somebody on staff who's done things like this before. All right, was that it?
That was it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Seeley. And I looked at Mr. Cully because I understand he did the same type of thing when he was at his previous place. So we may take that to you. And the last, my board comment is not necessarily a comment, just something I missed. We talked about the resolution based on what the registrar's comments were. No, not that resolution. This is a new one. This is based on cost of localities, where we'd like to get the state to pick up those costs, and we'd like to prevent the split Senate districts.
And House districts.
And House districts. So if the board has that and there's no objection, we'll have Mr. Cully print this out again, and I'll sign this, and we'll do it formally. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Akers, second by Mr. Underwood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. We will have this resolution signed and then forwarded to all of our legislators. That takes care of our regularly scheduled board meeting. And I would need a motion to convene and close meeting pursuant to the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff exemption, section 2.23711A7 of the Code of Virginia, regarding specific legal matters requiring legal advice regarding the joint petition before the SCC of Aqua Virginia and Ladysmith Water Company to transfer assets to Ladysmith Water Company to Aqua Virginia, and potential litigation regarding the proposed boundary line adjustment with the town of Bowling Green. Excuse me, that was just a habit. Town of Port Royal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. No, I need a motion to that.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor now can say aye.
Aye.
All right. So all opposed, nay. So we are now in closed meeting.
A closed session.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made by Mr. Seeley, second by Mr. Akers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Mr. Taylor, do you certify that only those things we went into closed meeting were discussed?
I so certify.
Mr. Black?
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Akers?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
I so certify.
And I too certify. There's no other business before us. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.